Hello, hello. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Thanks for coming for another video. I am so glad to have you back. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel, share on your social media, go to my social media and follow. It's the best way to get the best. If you didn't tune in, I'll go ahead and put that in the notes below. But if you didn't tune in, go ahead and tune in because it was an amazing episode. And I recorded in that episode about self-awareness. And one of the things that I talked about inside of that episode was how sometimes we have trouble assessing our own current reality because we're also having trouble assessing the fact that we need to look outside of ourselves to really determine what's going on with the other people to really take account of the narrative that we're telling ourselves inside of that space. And one of the main narratives that we tell ourselves when we're in a space where we aren't truly self-aware is that when our people, so the people, whether it be relationally, our parents, our kids, our boyfriend, spouse, whoever it is, friends, when those people have needs, that it means that we're not enough. So if you're anything like me and you have that not enough wound, one of the things that you can determine is that you need to be in spaces where people appreciate you, value you, and love you for who you are. And while that is true, and I 100% agree with that notion, you should be able to allow yourself to fully be yourself and be appreciated by the people that you allow to align with you in your life. Absolutely factual. That doesn't mean that there aren't things inside of those spaces that other people are going to need from you. And if you're not fully aware of the narrative that you have internalized that says, if I'm in a space, I should just be able to be in that space. And if someone needs something extra from me, then that means that they don't think that I'm enough. Then you really are allowing yourself to internalize a narrative that just isn't true. And I know that that's really hard because you know, just like I know, that if the people in your life are yours, like if you've truly taken inventory of yourself, you know exactly who you are, who you want, or what you want, who you want, what you need, all of the things, then everything that comes after that is in alignment with who you are because you know what to reject and you know what to accept based on that alignment. And you end up with this core group of people who are yours. And when you're with the people who are yours, it is much easier to navigate those relationships. However, you still have people who you didn't get to handpick, like your parents. You still have people who didn't get to handpick, like your children, but they were handpicked for you. And so, whatever is left there is yours, and it's yours for a reason. And when you know that to be true, then sometimes you get into the space where you feel like, well, they should just accept me for exactly the way that I'm able to navigate and be okay with it. They shouldn't need anything. And oftentimes that comes from a space of if you feel like you're not enough, you were left to navigate the world all by yourself when you were a kid. And so you hold resentment for people who need things from you because you're one of those people who pride yourself on never asking for help from anybody and being there for everybody. But eventually that leads to a well that runs dry. And what happens is you feel like you should be able to just exist and everybody should be happy that you're existing in that space. But if you're a reformed people pleaser, you go from a space where you're doing everything that everybody needs you to do to a space where you're able to say no and navigate the world in a way that means that you're looking out for yourself too. And sometimes when you switch to that space, people still need things from you. So, how do you get to a space where you realize that the people in your life needing things doesn't equate to the narrative that you're not enough? Well, it requires you to access your capacity. So, just because you don't have enough to do it today doesn't mean that you're incapable of doing it. And just because you didn't have enough to do it previously doesn't mean that the next space you go into has to be a toxic attachment to the things that you're unwilling to do because when you did them before, they were taken advantage of. An example of that is in a previous relationship that I was in with a toxic person. He was going through, you know, the loss of his job and just a really tough situation. And he didn't feel like his family was being supportive enough. So he put that entire burden on me because I was really the only person that he had. And it was okay for me to do until we got to like the ninth month of this situation. And, I had done everything I knew to do. I was feeling like I needed to do more today to outperform what I did the day before because he was consistently needing more from me because I was the only person who was giving him that support at the time. And so it eventually resulted in a conversation where he said, "You might feel like you're supporting me, but you're not doing enough because you should know that I need X, Y, Z." And so that ended up being the very clear end or beginning of the end of our relationship. But when I got into a healthy relationship, I realized that this person doesn't actually require me to be the only person to support him. But I also had previously told myself that I wouldn't allow myself to fully be consumed by another person and their problems. Had I done that in a toxic way, though, anytime he needed anything from me, I would be like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that because you should be able to do that on your own. I'm only here to exist in the capacity at which I've told you I can exist. So when I say you need to assess your capacity, that's a daily occurrence. Like today, my 100% might be what is 80% of what my 100% was yesterday. And so I'm assessing it every single day. If I don't have the capacity to help you, it doesn't mean that I don't love you. So very much like my limited capacity doesn't mean that I don't love them. Their need from me doesn't mean that they don't think that I'm enough as is. It just means that they are dealing with something internally and they need something extra from the people around them. Secondly, you have to be honest about your position. So thankfully, the person that I am in relationship with right now understands that my capacity is sometimes limited because I'm doing everything on my own inside of my household. And so sometimes that can get really mundane and difficult. And because he understands my plight, because he sees it every day, oftentimes he won't ask me for the things to the point where I have to be like, hey, you can ask me for things because this is what I'm here for. Like, I am your partner and I want to make sure that I'm here for you. But for him, it's if he asks me to do something, then it's him not being considerate of the fact that I'm doing so much for everybody else. And so what I really want you to consider is that you have to be honest about your position. You have to say, you know what, today I had to do so much for everybody else, and I am here to listen, but I have no space to provide you with a solution today. We can revisit this conversation tomorrow, and I would love to be able to come up with, a brainstorming session to help you. But today, I don't have the capacity or the mental space or the mental fortitude to be able to do that in a way that I know is going to be helpful to you. So it's really thinking, this is what I have to give today, and being honest about that position, being honest about the fact that some days you might not have enough because it's you doing so much for everybody else. And then lastly, you have to make sure that what you're feeling, what you're processing, the way that you're positioning yourself is being done with love and understanding and not resentment and frustration. Because when you operate in a space of resentment and frustration, you start withholding things just because nobody's giving those things to you. So why should you give them to everybody else? And operating from that space of resentment will end up snowballing into an avalanche of unprocessed and undealt with emotions and situations, and that will end up just turning into a even bigger ordeal than just being honest and understanding that if you approach this with love and understanding, that oftentimes that's what will be reciprocated in return. Now, when you're dealing with somebody like in my previous relationship who is unwilling to approach you with love and understanding, then you may not get that in return at all, and that's when you need to evaluate what's in alignment with you. But if you are around your people and you are in alignment with those people, then you have to make sure that you're approaching it with love and understanding. And then lastly, really be real with yourself. Like, this is such a hard thing for us to do because we're so used to filtering everything through the lens of what other people might say, think, or do as a result of what we say, think, or do. And so therefore we do what we think they want us to say, think, or do instead of doing what we know is in alignment with us. But when you get real with yourself, you're able to say, listen, I love you and I understand that you're in the space that you're in. And this is the capacity at which I have to support you and be there for you. And I need to know if that's enough for you because I know I'm enough for you. But for this current situation and on this current day, this is all I have. And I would love to be able to support you. But right now, I just am not in that space. It's much like if someone comes to you and asks you to borrow money, and you know that if you give them that money, you're not going to be able to pay your rent. You also know that that person will give it back to you when they're able to, but it's going to put you in a really tight situation. It's thinking about, do I have the capacity to give them this money? And I know they really need it, but also at the same time, so do I. And there has to be a conversation around that. And you can't feel bad because you can't give it to them because you need it for yourself. And so when you're with people who are in alignment with you, they won't get upset with you because you don't have enough to give to them, because you have to have something to give to yourself, because they don't want to see your well run dry. They want to see your cup runneth over. And so they're willing to give back to you. And that's the really last thing that I want you to think about is when you're thinking about the entire episode that I just recorded, you have to make sure before you even process all of this information that you're surrounded by your people. Because if you're not surrounded by your people, then those people aren't filling you back up either. And when it comes to your kids, I know they're not innately going to think about doing that. They're not going to be like, oh, my mom's cup needs to be filled today, so let me go do some things for her. However, when you are honest with them, when you assess your capacity and you do it with love and understanding, you will train them to understand that they can't just take and take and take until someone's well runs dry. They will understand that if there's something they can do for themselves, that they should try to do that right now because mom looks really tired and she's been doing a ton of stuff today. So if you're in a space where you're thinking that the people around you having needs just means that you're not enough, and clearly you're not cut out to be a mom, a daughter, a wife, or fill in the blank with some title here, just remember that before you are any of those things, you are a person, and you are cut out and crafted to be specifically that person. And that person has limitations. That person has a capacity, and that person needs to be honest with the people around her so that they know that she is not a constant source and oasis for all of the things that they need to fill their cups, but that she also requires things to make sure that she is safe, to make sure that she is able to regulate her emotion, and to make sure that she has the capacity to give to them on a daily basis without feeling like she needs to take a week-long vacation every 3 weeks because her well is dry. If you find yourself in this space, definitely reach out. I would love to help you through the process. If this message helped you and you think it would help someone else, remember to go ahead and share the page, subscribe to the page, share the page with other people, go on my socials, do the same thing. Because remember, information gained and kept to yourself is selfish, but share with the world. It may break them free from the bondage that they're experiencing in a much earlier stage than it did for us, so that they may live a life of freedom that's not requiring them to live in expectation, but is requiring them to live in abundance. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.